live with episode 48 of the Wake Up Podcast. And this time I've got Steve Barbour with me. He's the founder and CEO at Upstream, or Upstream. Is it Upstream Data? Help brother
Yeah,
out.
Upstream Data. Yep.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's data or data. I just go
data.
with
Yeah. Okay.
whatever.
I've started saying data since I've been in America because I'm trying to you know when you're like in a new place and you kind of absorb the accent a little bit.
Oh yeah, I'm from Newfoundland, man. I should have a thick Newfie accent, but I've lost it. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah.
for being
So
surrounded by normal people.
yeah. Well, no one ever picks that I'm from Australia. They're like, oh, your accent's kind of like British. It's kind of like this, it's that. It's like, yeah, well, that's what happens when you don't live in the place. I actually hate the fucking Aussie accent, but that's another story. So to kick this off, you were telling me before we got started that apart from what you're doing at Upstream, you're also a stripper in your part-time. Is that right?
Yeah, I do shows for I still
The
need
Fiat
to earn
Maxes?
I need to earn some fiat money in my spare time. So I'm still stripping at birthday parties and the like bachelorette parties. You know,
God help us.
any way to stack some sats, man. Absolutely.
Exactly. But look, in all seriousness, I was curious because I've heard you on like one or two podcasts, but I'm curious what you were doing before Upstream and how you sort of wound up, doing something which is, most people would consider quite niche. Yeah, kind of curious to know what led to that in the first place.
Yeah, it was certainly quite niche when I started. It's actually exploding. Like the industry, it's almost like I feel like it's what everyone in the mining industry is starting to talk about now. So that's almost 5 years later. So it's pretty amazing to see just the change over that time. But yeah, no, what I was doing before, like I got into Bitcoin in 2016. So like even then, I immediately sort of saw, probably like you did, okay, this thing is really weird and unique. Like I gotta learn more about it, right? It took me a while to really. I honestly sort of became a Bitcoin maxi almost immediately though. Like it, I'm always been not a fan of just some of the stuff that's going on out there in the world, like the corruption that you see. And as soon as I saw all these, like, because I got in there in 2016, just before Ethereum started pumping. And as soon as that did, I was like, oh, what's Ethereum? Like, is this a new cool coin? And I started looking into it. It was like, my God, like this is just nonsense, right? So I've been really into Bitcoin since, and it was just sort of weird. I don't even know how I got into Bitcoin originally. I had downtime. Like I had quit my job and I was starting an oil service business. I was actually just gonna, my whole career plan was to look at what people are selling, like good products in the oil field, find what is selling and what's making money, make it a little bit better, patent it, license the patent to the person who's selling it, get a little bit of passive income, and just move on. That was like my career. That was literally what I was going to do in my life. And I actually started doing that, and I got, I think I have 2 patents licensed for oil field tools. And I just have like a small, it's not a lot of money, but it's like a small, like honestly, like I think it's just the best thing, like for engineers or people that like designing things. Like it's an amazing thing, because it's once you get it done, you have to take a bunch of risk, but once you get it done and you successfully license it, you just have passive income for like as long as as long as it sells, right? So that was my career path, and then I got into Bitcoin, and I was like, well, the reason actually why I got so driven into Bitcoin was because I immediately just saw the potential for oil field mining, and then I learned about how amazing Bitcoin was. First, it was just like, oh, I can make money doing this in oil field maybe, and make a product, and then the more, like yourself, I'm sure, the more you dug into Bitcoin, you're like, oh my God, this thing is
the more you realize,
change the world, right?
So okay, so does that mean you were sort of in oil and gas beforehand, right? Like that was your thing?
Yeah, I'm an oil and gas maxi before Bitcoin maxi.
Yeah, cool. And how long was sort of that foray or that chapter of your life, I guess? Not that it's ended, but
No, it's not ended. I'm hoping to have a full career there, even if like one day I stop doing the Bitcoin mining thing, which I hopefully won't. But um, that started in 2008 for me. That's when I
Okay.
was a student at an oil company. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I
And
just think the industry is amazing. Like it's yeah, it's like for people that never worked in it, like they might have a certain image of it, but like it's one of the most innovative, like amazing industries out there. And I mean, it fuels everything in the world, so obviously it's important.
yeah, it's I mean, it's very rare these days to find someone who, I mean, particularly our generation. So if you're still a student in 2008, so was I. So I'm guessing what you're like sort of early mid 30s roughly.
Yeah, 34.
Yeah. Okay. Fuck. Okay. We're the same age then. So I'm 34 next month. So, you know, kind of growing up in sort of our age, and I don't know what it was like in Canada, but like in Australia, you know, I went and did civil engineering at university, and I was literally surrounded by, you know, fucking people who were already being infected with the, you know, the green thing, and you know, you wouldn't have met anyone there who was really interested in being, you know, involved in kind of like
Yeah,
oil and gas. Like it was, you know, civil or environmental or electrical,
yeah,
a little bit of mechanical engineering. There was mechatronics, which was sort of growing at the time, but you know, nothing in terms of like resources, natural resources and shit. So what was kind of the early seeds for you that helped you view the world differently and go down that path?
well, when I was in school, like, so I was in university from 2006 to 2011, and that's when I was studying mechanical, and that's when I sort of decided oil and gas, mainly because Canada had a lot of opportunity for oil and gas. So I knew that I could
Yeah. Okay.
probably
Yeah.
land a job, but I was also interested in other things, like maybe automotive, like design, all kinds of things you can do. Um, I don't remember actually, like even I don't remember in university ever seeing like any level of what we see today against like anti-fossil fuel stuff.
Mm, mm, mm,
Maybe that's because I was in a university who serviced the offshore fossil fuel industry, offshore Canada. That's possible.
mm-hmm,
Maybe it just wasn't as big a thing, and it was just starting to really become a big political thing. But I don't
yep.
remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. So like, I don't ever remember feeling, oh, like, am I, doing a job that's bad for the environment or stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But the way I look at it nowadays, honestly, like I think oil and gas producers, uh, there's nothing. They're not doing anything against the best interest of the environment. In fact, quite the opposite. I mean, they're doing exactly what we need to do to protect humanity from the environment and that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm,
I look at it completely different now. Bitcoin and people in the Bitcoin space and the educators out there, like the sound money economist types, the Safedeans of the world. Like more recently, I had only just recently discovered like Alex Epstein, who's a big advocate for fossil fuels, and like
mm-hmm,
his points of view have influenced me a lot recently. But even before him, I was right on the same path as him with my view on this industry, and I'm just relentless. I'm relentless online with um, just not, I don't know, not complying or not buying into the bullshit rhetoric around the carbon stuff as it relates to oil and gas.
yeah.
So that's a
I
whole deep rabbit
I
hole, but
I want to dig into that rabbit hole during this convo, but before we sort of before we land there, I guess I 100% concur in terms of what you said, like the position, the rhetoric, the messaging back in 2008 was definitely not as strong as it is now. Like fucking the world's completely lost its mind, and I mean, you know, Corona scam and all the other shit aside, like genuinely these days, like to think that someone coming through university is going to say, I'm going to look for a career in oil and gas, like they would probably get fucking, you know, thrown out of
the,
school almost. It's like
the
that fucked
sad,
up.
it's sad actually because like kids are being taught that like coal and oil and gas are like stone
Evil
age,
or
like
something.
going
Yeah.
the yeah evil, going the way of the dinosaur. There's no future in it. It's just like there's just people will realize here in the next couple of years when the oil price hits $200, where that's where it's going,
Hmm.
that oil is not going anywhere for quite a long time.
Yep. Yep.
No fossil fuels are. I mean, it's just the raw. People don't even, the people that speak against it so often and want to ban it and want to ban engines and stuff. They don't ever even talk about like the fact that crude oil and coal are used as raw materials in basically everything,
Everything.
literally
Yeah.
everything. So it's just it's unbelievable to me that in both like academia and at the political stage, places where you'd expect there to be reasonable discourse and like true experts would be able to say these things and not be shamed into submission, right? Like not be like, it's just unbelievable that we're talking about replacing even coal in North America. Like it's just not, it's really just not feasible because you end up just displacing it to other countries. And it's just the everything about it is just insanity. But I mean, that's the world we live in now. We live in the upside down world
We
where
really do.
money is unsound and reason doesn't exist, and everything is left is right and up is down. It's just, you know, we just live in the clown world, like backwards world.
We really do, man. We really do. Like I think many of these idiots, and this is one of the things I struggle with. Like, you've got the Ayn Randian um, idea of like, stop the engine of the world, walk away and let these idiots actually see, the consequences of their actions and the consequences of their belief, right? Is you let the fuckers starve, you let them freeze, you let them, have no plastic containers, no refrigerators, no transport, no nothing, and see, how they feel. But to do that, like, it would require us like to effectively abandon the world. So it's almost like, we're the ones, whether it's Bitcoiners, whether it's people in the oil and gas industry, in the energy industries and all this sort of stuff, that are literally holding everything together and literally sheltering these people, literally giving them the so-called creature comforts and things that they depend on to exist and survive, and they're kind of like throwing stones and shit and sticks and everything at us. It's the
Yeah.
injustice fucking drives me crazy. Like, it genuinely fucking infuriates the hell out of me.
Oh, yeah, me too. It's like that meme where that soldier stands over the bed and takes all the
Yes.
knives and the gunfire and like the sound, sleeping babies out there keep whining about how hard life is, right? But like, yeah, I mean, the oil industry, it has been demonized for quite a long time now, and the Canadian, like, being in Canada, uh, the Canadian oil industry as well.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
they've suppressed our oil. Like we can't get it to market. They call our oil dirty. They call it tar sands. They've made these like memes around our oil as being like the worst, when in fact it's like we hold the highest regulatory standards pretty much in the world. We have like the highest, call it, uh, safety, compliance rules and environmental rules, and there are pockets of the industry where it's not exactly the case, but and then meanwhile, so like just one anecdotal example, but like Canada, we're importing oil on the east coast of the country from the US, uh, and from Saudi Arabia, and like and we're doing ridiculous things because they won't let us build pipelines where we're shipping oil like from one coast to get it over to the other coast, like going uh, around the continent, and it's just madness what's happening. And yeah, everyone's getting demonized. People are being put out of work. I mean, when I
What's
start, well, I'll just make one last point on this. When I started working in
Yeah, go
2011,
go 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 go.
yeah, when I started working in 2011, uh, oil was booming, and I made a lot of friends. I moved to a place where I didn't know anyone, so I really grew a new friend base. And now I look back and almost like I would have to guess around 80% of the people I worked with and made friends with are gone. They're out of the industry. And it really comes down to politics. Like politics destroyed the Canadian oil and gas industry, the liberal politics that came in. And it's sad because most of those people, like, they went somewhere else. They did fine. But there's a lot of people up here in Alberta, Saskatchewan that aren't doing fine after this downturn over the last like half decade. And a lot of them had turned to drugs and alcohol, and a lot of them entered depression. There's some percentage of the hundreds of thousands of people in this workforce that are no longer with us, like, and they went through a really rough patch and their families were broken up, and like there's a lot of human elements to this, and that's why it is never portrayed in any media uh, about what happens when you have politics effectively make these shifts in what's hot in the market, like the shift away from fossil fuels and subsidizing everything else. So it's that's the unfortunate part. That's the part that people don't generally hear. They don't hear about, right? So it's stuff that I,
Yeah,
as a person in the oil patch and other people in the oil industry, we feel that, we see it. So it shapes the way we view everything. So we don't really buy into a lot of the stuff, like, unfortunately the kids in school are being taught now.
yeah. I mean, I can agree with that. I mean, I always have very little remorse about people who go into alcoholism and drugs and depression and everything, because at the end of the day, like that's an individual choice anyway. And the difference is not what happened, the difference is what you do with it. Clearly you just mentioned some people went and did okay, but some people chose to be a victim and fucking go down the toilet. So that may have just been a matter, government stupidity may have just been a catalyst, and unfortunately that catalyst existing is unjust. But I don't know how much remorse I have for people who do end up taking the path of a victim, but that's another discussion. What I wanted to ask on a practical basis was what's the, because I always hear, and I don't know the answer to this, is like, what is the pushback against pipelines that I always hear? Like, from all the time, whenever I hear about fucking oil shit, there's always something wrong with a pipeline being run. What's the issue with that? Because I can't think of a better way to fucking move things around, particularly oil.
Well, it's not the politics around pipelines have nothing to do with like technical or engineering reasons. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not we're not like, say, blockading pipelines, say, in this country because it's bad for the environment. Like, and that's the rhetoric, but that's not the actual case. Pipelines, there's nothing better for the environment than pipelines. They're the most efficient way to
Mm-hmm.
move
Mm-hmm.
this liquid, right? Trains. So there's, I can only speculate, right? Like I can't tell you what the answer is, but it's a political reason. It's not technical, because any engineer would build a pipeline in 99% of cases. There's, rail is a big thing, right? So there's speculation that the people that own the rail, like the Warren Buffetts of the world, lobby against pipelines in Canada. They want to keep our oil isolated up here and this is again just talking Canada specific,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but like all the pipeline blockades, say, relating to Canada, it's all about they don't want our oil on the market. And it probably has something to do with Canadian oil is enormous. Like people have no idea how enormous the reserves are up here. Like it's absolutely, like we're one of the, I think we're in the top 3 in the world in reserves, and it's
Wow.
extremely easy to access. And we have no one to sell it to aside from the US. So okay, so we can't ship it offshore, uh, or at least any project we try to go to the east or west coast to ship it gets blockaded. And you have to think, well, who stands to lose if Canadian oil floods the market? Well, number one would probably be the U.S. Like they would lose
Mm-hmm.
big time. So there are financial interests at play that are blockading these things. And so it's such a joke up here that we actually sell our oil down from Alberta to the US, who then sells it back to us on the East Coast. They just pipe it over, then sell it back to us, and they make a huge markup. So they buy it at a discount, sell it at a premium to our own country. Like, that's how much of a joke like Canadian sovereignty is. Like, we have no sovereignty. We're actually a puppet nation. That's what people don't really get. So that pipelines, there's the only reason you wouldn't build a pipeline is if you had a cheaper alternative like rail. And in some cases that's true, but in most cases it's not.
Interesting, because it reminds me. Have you ever read the Rockefeller biography or anything, or done any sort of study on Standard Oil?
I've done a lot of just random online reading about him and the Standard Oil, and I did read some Mises.org pieces on it about Rockefeller and how he was a true innovator and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I just finished his book recently, and or his biography, and it was very, very well written. It was written in the 90s, I think. So a little bit before the major rise of social justice warriorness. So it had a little bit of a tinge of that, but you really saw how much of a genius he was. But he was also, I think, definitely, obviously, a flawed character in his idea that he pushed this idea of cooperation, not competition, which I think was completely moronic. His idea of like, we shouldn't have competition because competition creates mess in the marketplace. And in a sense, on a short time frame, he was right, because there was a lot of, boom bust cycles happened so regularly in the early days of oil that, it was very difficult to run a business. So, he helped standardize a lot of it. But I think the longer term detriment was that it created some power centers. But what was interesting, so I want to go on two tangents here about this, is the real Rockefeller monopoly, or the real Standard Oil monopoly, despite the consolidation that he had in the early days, pre the regulatory shit, only really occurred after the government gained enough power such that Standard Oil could lobby the government for particular things. And then when the government, in their stupid attempt with fucking, I think it was, pretty sure it was Roosevelt, who tried to, break the trusts, he actually created something so much larger than what he, what he was able to, what the intent was to destroy. So it's like the government, in their typical incompetence, actually first enabled the monopoly, and then second made the monopoly even stronger, and then sort of tied those two things together and created these so-called special interest groups. But sort of in the early days, there was, Rockefeller as an innovator himself was fucking incredible. But I don't know if you've got any comments on that, but then I was going to also mention an anecdote about the first pipeline that was ever built. But do you have any thoughts on that really briefly, or?
Well, when you say the first thing you started with was competition and cooperation, right? I don't know exactly what you meant by him promoting cooperation. It sounds like almost like cartelization and like price fixing.
He called it cooperation, but yeah, it was cartelization basically. Yeah.
So I certainly agree with you there. Like, competition, like free market competition, is the way to be. But that being said, I don't think competition and cooperation are entirely exclusive. Just for example, like in our business, like Bitcoin mining, right? Like it's an uphill battle in Bitcoin to get adoption. And Bitcoin mining, say in our business, like adoption in the oil field is still, and it certainly was immensely an uphill battle. Like when I was one of the only people out there, there's a few other pockets of individuals out there, but like when I started pushing it, it was very difficult. But what I found is like I've actually done a lot of cooperating with my own competition over the years, and that's actually been paying massive dividends because they're adding credibility to the space and helping us, and B, they're referring to us and we're referring to them, and it's just sort of a synergistic. It's almost like I find the Bitcoiners, like at least true Bitcoiners, we all have like a mentality that we're all in it together.
Yep.
So that's one thing I just want to comment on: competition versus cooperation. I think there's elements of both. As for the rest of Rockefeller, I don't know his entire. I didn't read the biography, um, but it's certainly, I can agree with you that regulation, government, and increased regulation just creates more bloat and bottlenecks, more opportunity for corruption. It does the exact thing it intends to fix.
To stop. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
yeah, that's the irony of regulation. Like the SEC, who's that guy in the news recently, the head of the SEC, talking about
Yeah,
regulating
Gensler or something his name.
Gensler? Yeah, he's talking about how cryptocurrency needs to be regulated. It's like, dude, you're an imbecile. Like, it's been a free market. It's grown a massive adoption. It's made countless people like free of financial oppression.
Hmm.
No, it doesn't need that. Like, yes, people are getting scammed. I know some people that got scammed, fucking like insane amount of money. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like how much money they lost in Ethereum and hacks, and but they're still doing great. They bought back in. They're still killing it, and
Hmm.
like, I don't think there's a lot of victims out there.
Dude, we literally built this whole fucking thing. We did it all without them. We didn't want them involved, and now they're coming to the rescue to help people. It's like, fuck
It's
off,
a
you loser.
I've been getting on that on Twitter lately. It's a protection racket. You
It's
need to be
exactly what it
protected.
is.
You need to be protected from this boogeyman, and here we are to protect you with these regulations that are going to effectively fuck you up in the long term.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like, that's what the fiat maxis out there are pushing for, and the fiat maxis amongst the Bitcoiners, which there are many of. Many of them just
yeah.
don't know it. They're like, oh yeah, we need to fight this regulation. We need yeah, it's the regulation is coming. That is what um, fiat maxis do. They come to regulate and to tax and take their cut. And I find it funny that people are surprised by this. Like, it's only just beginning. Like,
Mm, mm.
it's gonna get really. I think it's gonna get really bad, but I don't know. I'm also like very conservative, and I'm always trying to think like worst case and
Yeah,
position ourselves for that. And then if it doesn't happen, well, we're good.
yeah. Well, that's because you're an engineer, man. You know, you understand factor of safety. Most people fucking
Yeah,
don't
you know what?
understand that.
That's probably is what it is. Like, it's
Yeah.
probably, I have a mentality of designing for the worst case,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
if it doesn't happen, we're good. That's why
Yeah.
I'm such a bear on Bitcoin all the time. I'm like, oh, the price is probably, because I'm planning for the worst case, like the price staying down,
Yeah.
not pumping like everyone thinks. But then when it pumps, like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm great, like, because I've planned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, the one of the things as I was reading the Rockefeller book, like, or I mean, I audio booked it, and it was just funny because even the biographers and all this stuff, they didn't make the connection throughout the book. They kind of framed Standard Oil as this emergent leviathan whose aim it was to create this monopoly for the purpose of like sort of owning the thing. And whilst that may have been true, you know to a degree they may have been the architect of it, but the actual the the what actually enabled them to become a monopoly was like you just look at the timeline, and the points at which Standard Oil actually transformed into a functional monopoly, like into a legal monopoly, was the point at which Congress and the government got involved. Like before that, what what uh, what was happening was more of a consolidation and an attempt to cartelize the market in a market situation, which was actually, it succeeded for a bit, but it was starting to fail. And all the regulatory crap came in just as Texas got independence and they found their own oil, and actually competition entered the market that Rockefeller and gang couldn't actually compete with and couldn't cartelize, which had Congress and government stayed the fuck out, they would have out-competed Rockefeller and stuff. So the only reason they managed to get a monopoly, a capitalist type monopoly was because all of the resources were centered around Pennsylvania at the time. So anyway, I recommend everyone go and read that book, because they'll sort of start to really learn about, you know, how in capitalism things sort of ebb and flow, but they find their own natural corrective mechanism, and you know, things will find a natural equilibrium. You there is no such thing as any organization being able to run everything all the time, because you know, you need to be nimble. Like, competition is the ultimate equalizer. But another thread that I want to pull on there is, while I was reading that, it also dawned on me, like, Rockefeller was genuinely the richest motherfucker who ever lived. Like,
Yeah, I think he
genuine.
was.
Like, yeah, people think like Bill Gates has money and, like, you know, Zuckerberg and all that shit. Those motherfuckers have fiat cuckbucks that have been, you know, extra printed, particularly in the last 20 years. Like, value for value speaking, Rockefeller outpaced those fuckers 10-1 at least.
I don't think there
At
can be
fucking least.
any. I don't think anyone has come close to have produced the most value for humanity than that man and his enterprises. Because he basically created, if I understand correctly, the entire petrochemical space, which is enormous. Like, the entire textiles industry is derived from that. It's not just the fuel and the gasoline, like, it's everything else, all the derivatives. And there's literally countless products that came from his enterprises.
Well, see what I saw there.
And meanwhile, we got Elon Musk with like an EV and some solar panels, and he's
fucking
being
loser.
he's being paraded around like some godlike innovator. He literally has done very little at all, actually, in terms of total productivity to humanity. Uh, you can argue that he's actually in the negative based on how much
Yeah,
tax dollars he's sucked up. But yeah, it doesn't
100% agree.
even. Yeah, I mean, it's just a weird thing where someone like him, who hasn't really done a lot, is getting so hyped. And if you compare him or contrast him to like someone like John D. Rockefeller, like, it's not even like, it's this guy was what he ended up doing, and what's how it's transformed all of society throughout the world is just unbelievable. And I'm sure if it wasn't him, it would have been someone else. Like, it could have
Somebody
been,
else. Yeah.
but he truly was obviously an amazing businessman.
Yeah, he managed to put process and system behind something and actually transform it into, like, so the way I see it is that the it reminds me of the transformation that's happening in Bitcoin, right? So there was a time before oil, and then there was a time after oil, and there was, you know, there was a few key people like, you know, Rockefeller, etc., who basically created a means via which energy transmission, uh, you know, could occur across a large region, and that literally transformed America. You know, when people, like, I always get angry when people talk about, oh, yeah, America was built on slavery. It's like, no. America was built on fucking oil. Like, that discovery and the fact that John D actually leveraged uh, the extraction of high high density energy and managed to figure out a means via which that could be transmitted and transported around the entire fucking country. That's what actually made America the richest fucking nation on the planet. He did it better than fucking everybody else. And I think what's interesting is we're entering a new era like that, which is going to be another 0 to 1 moment for society. But this is, you know, Bitcoin, mind you, I believe is much larger than energy, because Bitcoin encompasses time and energy. So like, it's literally the substrate that sits beneath all of it. But
Yeah,
that kind of shift is occurring now, which is, you know, I just can't help but wonder, like, you know, the greatest wealth known to man today was literally came from the unlocking of the resource that was oil, and now we're unlocking, you know, the resource that is money, and there will be that same type of wealth creation and fundamental transformation to society with Bitcoin. So that was just an interesting parallel that I
I
picked
think
up,
you're
which I
I
think is
think you're
super
right.
poignant.
I think you're right. And I think Bitcoin is completely transformative. I think it'll play out a bit different. Like, I don't think we're going to see monopolists like a John D. Rockefeller I mean, the closest we've had in Bitcoin, I guess you could say so far, is like, I don't know, like Jihan Wu, like, I don't know, like some guys like that who really monopolize like certain parts of the industry. But look at them now, like they've fallen from grace. Their companies are split up. See, Bitcoin is fundamentally different. Whereas in the oil, call it the oil revolution, which arguably lasted for quite a long time. It didn't just sort of spark with only Rockefeller, but um, there are certain things in place that allowed him to monopolize, such as the patent system. Things that, like, they were doing so much innovation in the petrochemical space and like finding ways to use the waste product of crude oil, right? They'd refine kerosene and then they figured out diesel and gasoline. I don't know exactly the timelines, but then all the scrap stuff, the stuff that, you know, was just waste at some point, they found other ways to use it, and they kept, you know, patenting and monopolizing more and more technologies. And that has a obviously a monopolizing effect, that legal leverage. And I'm sure that was largely leveraged to their advantage to keep them in power, because normally in a business, if you have no legal means to dominate a market, even if you start growing really big and you're super successful because you got a great product, great staff, what ends up happening is staff will leave. They'll ditch you because they're like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
I know the business
Why am I
now.
making him all the money? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then they'll go do it themselves and they'll split off, and that's a healthy. I look at that as like a healthy thing, right? Like, uh, it's just that's how competition. So I always thought Bitcoin is gonna, whereas like in this world of fiat, which has been long lasting, you have consolidation, right? Everything, companies eat
Mm-hmm.
each other up, and it's consolidation and becomes very top heavy. But I think this Bitcoin already, it's probably too early to really sense it, but I think we saw it with Bitmain. It created like internal struggles that ruptured the company, and it split. And I think you're going to see that in everything, like every institution, you're going to see that because people are going to be, there's going to be more opportunities available for people, and Bitcoin is going to give people more opportunity, and they're going to start, everything's going to start splintering, I think. The unconsolidation of the consolidated market, really.
It will. I still
So
think there's going to be that, you know, for me, the 80-20 rule applies, like Pareto's distribution applies to everything, is that, you know, concentrations will happen. But what the difference that Bitcoin enables is dynamic inequality. So you'll get 80-20, but that 80-20 will be dynamic in nature, not static in nature. So the problem, like you just kind of mentioned, is that in today's day and age, because some people are close to the monetary spigot, or, you know, no, you know, ex-regulators or whatever, like the fact that the monopoly of a government exists, the closer you get to it, the more you can create this sort of static inequality, which is not 80-20, it's more like 99.9 and 0.1.
yeah.
And it's fraudulent in nature, but Bitcoin kind of breaks that because it doesn't give you an ability to get close to the monetary spigot. It doesn't give you an ability to get an unfair advantage, where you can privatize your gains and socialize your losses, right? That's effectively what is occurring today, is like, if you're close enough to that, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You can make any mistake you want, and then you get bailed out, which is fucked up. So the rest of us pay for, you know, that mistake. Whereas in Bitcoin, you can't do that. No one there to bail your ass out. So you actually have the risk of falling when making bad decisions. And you know, if you're an upstart and a competitor, you can rise. But I still think like that there will be this broad 80-20 split, but it'll be dynamic. And that's what's fucking beautiful about a natural capital system. And maybe what changes is the cycle time, like maybe shortens, because Bitcoin, the specter of economic reality that Bitcoin brings to the world, um, makes it such that correction must happen quickly, because you can't lie to
Hmm.
yourself by printing money. So you can't economically fucking do a fraud.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all that. Yeah, like I think it's gonna be a lot more difficult for people to come in and monopolize aspects of the Bitcoin denominated industry, which is, you know, a big, you know, Bitcoin denominated world. And really, you know, Bitcoin, it's obviously tough topic for people, but it demonetizes, it defunds government.
Mm.
It doesn't. It makes it. Sorry, I should say maybe not defunds them, but it makes it harder for government to fund itself, because it can no longer, a government that has to operate on a Bitcoin standard only has taxation to fund itself, direct overt taxation. It no longer has signage or in money printing, and when you
Mhm.
have that, it's also not that easy to tax and surveil Bitcoiners compared to say dollar holders. So it makes it, it will make, because the government effectively, like being the highest regulator, like the highest order of mafia in society, uh, they're what keeps these monopolies and these call it like the 99, what you said,
Yeah.
0.1% discrepancies alive. Um, yeah, whether it's the sweetheart deals they give and the contracts or the patent system, and I mean endless protection rackets that they employ,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah, it's literally everything they say they do. The result is the fucking opposite, and it's not, doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It's like even the ones who think they're doing the right thing are literally, adding to the wrong fucking outcome through their stupidity or myopia, like, or through their naivete, like, oh
yeah,
yeah, but if we put this regulation in, then maybe we can help the little guy. And some of them are actually genuinely trying to help, but they're like useless idiots that I mean, I don't know why people call them useful idiots, because they're not useful, they're actually useless. Maybe useless naive idiots with good intent that they make it worse. Like, it's the best thing for government to do is get the fuck out of the way. And that's why, yeah, like you said, Bitcoin is actually incompatible. Me and Pomp kind of had a disagreement about this when I was on his pod. I was like, dude, Bitcoin is fundamentally incompatible with government. Like,
yeah, it
or,
is.
or at least with large government. Like you said, it just doesn't make sense. A large scale government is a bankrupt institution. You can't be bankrupt on Bitcoin.
Well,
See you
it
later.
just
That's the end of the
makes
argument.
government accountable. That's all it does. It makes
That's it.
government
That's it.
accountable. So I don't think I wouldn't say incompatible with government, and I think we agree on this, is that it just shrinks government, and it shrinks the value of or certainly shrinks the services that say a federal government can even hope to render to society. And by necessity, that might eliminate a federal government, and it might just become local tribal governments back like it used
Mm-hmm.
to be,
Mm-hmm.
like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's really the way I look at it. I don't even see it. Yeah, I'm not like I personally see like use for government. I just think the current state of things is just absurd, and I think Bitcoin certainly will hold them accountable, and it'll force them to. I think even by the time, like 20 30 years from now, we're going to see massive changes like in the world with what Bitcoin is going to force upon all of society, and how they can operate and fund themselves. And more and more people will take the orange pill and protect their capital from tax
Yeah. Well,
and
and I mean,
dilution.
it'll the equation transforms from, coming to Bitcoin due to curiosity, and it'll be going to Bitcoin due to pain. Like, there's, I did an article a couple of years ago which was called it was called actually Bitcoin Lockdowns, I think, and it was about like a model for understanding Bitcoin's adoption curve. And Bitcoin's adoption curve was like, there's curiosity and want on one side, and like necessity and pain on the other side. And like
Mm.
the S curve, basically we reach maximum adoption when the pain threshold is hit for everybody, and that just comes differently. So the only question really for humans is, do you want to get Bitcoin because you're intellectually curious enough, like because you want to, or do you want to be one of the last idiots who gets it because you fucking have no other choice? Like, other choices like outright slavery or fucking starvation. Take your pick. Like, everyone's
Yeah,
either a Bitcoiner or a pre-Bitcoiner. That's it.
yeah, I generally agree with that. I think inevitably, whether people are using layered services, they have no choice. they're going to use it.
Yeah. All right, dude, that was a tangent. So I want to bring it back to Upstream. I actually want to bring it back to like some mining stuff. So before I ask about how average people can potentially mine, like can you talk through, because even I'm not 100% clear on what Upstream itself does specifically. So can you talk me through that, and then can you talk me through how other competitors are coming up in the industry and what they're doing that's similar or different, so we can kind of get a lay of the land and what's happening in that space.
Yeah, Upstream, we're all about providing product and services behind oil field Bitcoin mining. So really, the solution that when you hear about off grid like oil field mining, what we're all really generally all going after is like waste gas. Like gas is just energy that's just burning or dissipating away, and no one's using it. So that's obviously cheap. So that's like flare gas, vent gas, and then there are some other niche areas of waste gas. And then there's like stranded gas, so gas that's just sitting around waiting for someone to produce it. Like for example, all these wells, like there's thousands of wells, say in Canada, that are sitting there doing nothing, and there's no pipeline there anymore. It's gone, or it was never completed, and that's stranded. So it's just turn the tap on, and there you have energy pouring out, right? So it's again, it's cheap. So that's what all the Bitcoin miners in the oil space, and that's what I focus on, are going after. My business, I position my business to be, really just a service to oil companies. So it's not, I can contrast it against maybe some of our competitors, but in the end, we're all doing the same thing. In the end, we're taking natural gas, raw energy in the form of natural gas, combusting it in an engine or turbine, so a power plant, generating electricity, and then distributing that electricity through like a Bitcoin mine or container or pod, or I just call ours like hash huts, like these buildings. And then they feed a Bitcoin machine, connect to the internet, and then you're mining Bitcoin. So that's that process from fuel gas to Bitcoin is the exact same for everybody. There might be minor variations on it, and the products might vary, but that's what everybody's doing. So my business is all about selling this equipment to people that need it, which is usually the oil companies, but sometimes also third parties who contract us to build them what they need for their deals with the oil companies. So we sort of have a couple different ways that we sell. But we, unlike say other guys in the space, we're not focused on self-mining. I don't focus on self-mining. So meaning like I fund everything. I fund the genset, the building, the computers, put it on a well. I know guys that are even buying wells, like they're doing fully integrated stuff. It's something that I've been dabbling in ourselves. But for right now, we're more focused on just building this company as a service business. But guys are doing full stack. Like I know a guy is a good guy. I won't name him because I don't know if he wants me to talk about this, but he's on Twitter and he talks about it a little bit. But he's planning on drilling a gas well on his property and mining coins right there as a self-sovereign citadel, which is something I've been advocating online for many years about doing that kind of thing. And we're sort of doing that in a way. It's just not on our own land. So we're a service, and then the other guys in the industry, there's other, like the opposite end of what we do is like guys that come in and finance it all and they self-mine. So they're either mining on their own fuel gas, like they own the wells, or they're just buying the gas off somebody, but they're self-mining. So they're mining all the coins themselves. That's a very finance heavy model. You need a lot of financial backing. Whereas my model is more about service. So we sell it to people, they buy our product. So we grow off sales. Other guys grow off financing. And then now it's becoming very interesting in this space where I was listening to Lynn Alden talk about it today. She made some really good points about this, but it's becoming more and more common now for Bitcoin miners to use their Bitcoin as collateral to take out fiat loans, right? And then they keep refinancing their operations. So there are more and more Bitcoin miners, and that's what we're sort of starting to do. So Bitcoin miners are becoming even more hodling more than they might have in the past, right? So it's interesting. It's really interesting what's happening. And the space in the oil and gas industry, especially in North America, is really exciting. And I haven't really heard much about it elsewhere. Like I've had actually, you say you're from Australia, right? So I've had some inquiries from Australia. Australia is really big into coal bed methane, and you have a lot of natural gas. The only thing working against Australia is the heat, but that can be managed. So I expect to see more of it, to hear more about it in Australia and in other countries. But right now, it seems like North America is where it's really booming, like Canada, US.
Yeah. I think that point that you mentioned, that Lynn Alden was discussing. So I haven't heard her discuss it yet, but I'm in Austin at the moment, and we've sort of, me and some of the guys from Trammell Ventures have been sort of talking about how Bitcoin will have such an impact on the credit markets, and that's just a live example of like, use the Bitcoin as collateral to generate infrastructure to generate more Bitcoin. Like it's such a incredible
The
virtuous
fucked up,
cycle.
I think it's like, that, I was a peer who wrote speculative attack article,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
that whole meme. Like this is because I was just pondering the first. I was never really thinking about that as a tool in my business until like probably about 8 or 9 months ago. And maybe it wasn't even really a tool before then, because it's becoming more of a thing. Like more companies are offering this as collateral, right? Like, because I could never go to my bank before say, hey, do you want this Bitcoin as collateral and just give me a loan to expand
Mm-hmm.
my business? It would never work, right? But it seems like more and more companies are doing it. I don't know what point I was about to make, but oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. But
Fuck. So something about you weren't thinking about using it in your business before? Something
well,
changed there?
oh yeah, speculative attack. So
Okay.
I guess in theory, just maybe I'm wrong on this, but because right now there are companies, like I'm talking to one of them, I won't name them. I can give them say 10 Bitcoins or Bitcoin, and they'll give me 70% of that value in fiat. So 70% loan to value ratio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could then, in theory, go take that. Let's assume Bitcoin's on an upward path, because if it's not on an upward path, this plan doesn't work, but it generally
Mm-hmm.
is on an upward path, right? You can really just give a trusted custodian, which of course is a different topic, but you give them their Bitcoin as collateral. They'll give you fiat. You buy more Bitcoin and just keep keep compounding that. And as long as your Bitcoin collateral goes up in value, you're just like this. You're going to destroy the financial system like at some point. It's just snowballing, and everyone will
Mm-hmm.
keep doing that, and then there'll be a huge correction, and everybody, like half the people, get liquidated and get wrecked. But if you time it properly, like it seems like a ridiculous speculative attack, because as we know, Bitcoin generally goes up in value. So if the loan interest rate is like 7-8%, and on average Bitcoin averages better than that, you're
You're
like
up forever.
you're literally
Yeah.
printing money. Like you're literally
Yeah.
printing money and at
Yep.
no risk.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
I
I mean,
think that's kind of I honestly, when I started thinking about this, I feel like they are going to make that illegal, like in a very short order as this starts to grow. I don't know if they can, because online people are arguing me like, oh, you can't make it illegal. It's just property, and you can use property as collateral and stuff. But on it, like the
yeah,
fiat
I
maxis
think
are going to
they've,
make this.
I don't know, man. They'll try, but I think they actually caught themselves in a fucking bind, because like, so this is the catch-22 that they caught themselves in. They went ahead and classified it as property so that they could tax it as property, because that's where they can, get the best yield out of it, in terms from a taxation perspective. So they, in their like, this is the classic incompetence of bureaucrats, is they didn't expect the market to innovate in the way we have started to innovate, which is to use it as collateral. It's like, okay, property, sure, no worries, tax it, motherfucker. I ain't gonna sell it. So I feel like the way they're gonna try and do it is through unrealized capital gains. But I mean, if that ever goes through, I think that's gonna um, like they're gonna have to literally carve out unrealized capital gains tax for Bitcoin, because if they try to do
Yeah,
unrealized capital gains tax for property in general, I don't see how that can fly. Like that'll like,
You'd hope people would revolt against that, but
I mean, yeah, right. The last 12 months has proven otherwise.
yeah, true. No, I think it's such a, I mean, all Bitcoin has to do is keep on a reasonable trajectory like it has been showing itself to do. And this is going to
I
become
mean,
incredibly
yeah,
popular.
on a long enough time frame, the the numbers are incredibly on our side. Like on a short time frame, there's going to be clean outs, like you said. But yeah, I so just to tie off the upstream piece, then you guys effectively build your product is effectively like a mini mining operation that oil and gas producers or whoever wants to can just basically plug and play and
Yep.
transform stranded resources into Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So then quick question. So, most average plebs who might be listening to this podcast, can't do that themselves. What's your thoughts on people mining at home? Like, do you have any experience or any ideas or any thoughts on small scale mining and participation of like retail market into doing that?
Well, I've been saying for years, probably since like 2017, 18, that I believe the future is going to be like maybe not dominated, but it's going to be mining at home is going to become a really big deal. I think there's a lot of
Okay.
trends. I think there's a lot of trends that are pointing in that direction. Right now, mining at home is better than it probably ever has been. See,
Okay.
part of the problem in the Bitcoin space is like people think like, back in the days of like really early Bitcoin, like 2010, 2011, and like Satoshi, right? Like mining at home.
Hmm.
Look how
Hmm.
rich he was. Mining at home is dead now. It's like, no, that mining at home, even for Satoshi, was unprofitable. Like he was
Yeah.
running a fucking computer earning zero value. Yeah, he's earning 50 Bitcoin a block or whatnot, but that had zero value. He couldn't trade it with anybody. So like mining for the first like several years was completely unprofitable at home. You could always buy Bitcoin way cheaper than you could spend way less money with just buying it than you could on electricity and time and effort at home. But it's actually like right now it's almost like the best it's ever been because well, one, hardware is holding its value for the first time ever. If you bought an an Antminer S1 or like S7 was a pretty popular model, that thing depreciated so hard, and then just like just trying to mine at home was never that good because your hardware goes to shit in no time. You have to
Hmm.
upgrade. But now, like even S9s are still holding their own. You could still mine at home in a lot of places with S9s. The new gen, like if you think like 5, 10 years away, the newest like chips are going to be almost indistinguishable from the previous gen, and everyone's going to be on the same
Hmm.
basis, like playing basis for chip efficiency. And so this hardware will now hold its value over a very long period of time. And so then mining at home becomes even more attractive. Um, and then you got all the other regulatory stuff happening when that they're clamping down, and it's going to get a lot worse, especially in mining, I think. So mining at home is like the place where you can most easily mine under the radar, like non
Yeah.
KYC coins. No one knows you have them. No one knows, like they can't tag your name to them. So you can completely avoid all the crazy regulations they're going to bring in place, like, like unrealized gains taxes, like, and stuff like that, which are very, people think are like fantastic ideas, like fantastical as in like not possible, but like they're very much possible and they're very much likely, like is what,
Yeah.
because they're going to put Bitcoin specific rules in place, I think, because it's just going to flatten them if they don't. So I think they will.
Hmm. Hmm. So what would you recommend someone go out today, for example, that might want to do some at-home mining to go and get like an S9, or should they just go straight for
Um,
like the S19 because that's kind of already reaching the peak of what
yeah, that's a good question.
chips
It's
to
not
be?
an easy, if you ever like it, one, if you live in like California and you got a crazy high power price, you shouldn't do anything. Like just go buy some
Mm-hmm.
coins, buy coins.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
but then again, it's not for me to say, because you, Alex, like you might really, really value non KYC coins. You might
Mm.
be like, I just want no one to know I have coin. And you would much rather get less coin for your dollar, being non KYC, than buying it through an exchange and having to submit your ID and to the IRS and everything. Which is sort of how it works if you're trying to buy through an exchange. Like the tax man knows
Yep.
how much you have. So, it's not that I'm advocating like don't pay your taxes and stuff. Like I sort of am, but I'm not, because I do. But what you do, like every single individual has their own, they'll value that their own. So if you're an
Mm-hmm.
individual that thinks mining at home is it's fun and I want non KYC coins, then it's not really about like, okay, how do you maximize your coin stack? If it's purely about maximizing your coin stack, then you have to really look at the economic analysis, like power costs, like this, that, and the other thing. And there's no clear answer. So for that reason, I just say if you think you'd enjoy it, then yes, go for it. And then as for what computer you run, maybe go with new gen, because that you're going to be stacking more sats that way. And I don't think you're going to lose either way. Like Bitcoin's going to pump, you're going to make lots of money one way or the other in the long run. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to do it, then maybe just go get a new rig, and that'll really max out that circuit in your garage anyway and heat it up. So uh, you just got to consider all the factors. A lot of guys, like people like, if you're not doing any research, you might not realize that you're going to heat the hell out of that room it's in and make a lot of noise. So you might want to have a plan for that. But I love it. I started mining at home, and I did it because I needed to learn, because I wanted to start my
Mm-hmm.
business and I didn't know what it was. Like I was doing testing. I was like, oh, well, how much data does it use? Like, how much data will I use out in the field? Like, right. So could I use a cell modem? Can I use this or that? Right. So I was doing it for all kinds of reasons, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And like, it was early enough where I felt like a rebel. Like I felt
Yeah.
sort of like a rebel doing it. I was like, look at me mining and I'm cool and stuff. And it was fun. I loved talking to people about it when they came over and like, what's that noise in your garage and stuff. So, yeah. So I honestly don't think too hard about it. If you think you're going to have fun, then just go do it. And if it's purely economics and you're just stacking max sats and you don't care about KYC and all that stuff, well, then take a more serious look at it and see if it's viable.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, I mean, I am of the opinion that everyone should be doing at least a little bit,
I'm
even
not.
if
I'm not.
you don't
Like,
reckon.
no, well, are you going to get into, is it because you think it particularly makes it more resilient, or like Bitcoin more resilient, or?
A little bit of that. I think it's also a little bit of everyone should, if you really understand Bitcoin, having a non KYC stash makes sense. Number three,
Yeah,
you'll learn
it
a lot
does.
about Bitcoin. You'll learn a lot about the process. So I think everyone should at least have a single mining rig, even if it's a little bit older, a $500,000 mining rig, and you just sort of set up somewhere. Unless you're living in a fucking studio in the middle of Texas, or maybe Texas is not a good example, like in the middle of like somewhere that is hot and has high electricity costs, where you're going to fucking boil inside your house with your miner, then maybe that's not a good idea. But other than that, I think it kind of makes sense.
I do. The points you made, like where it's education, where it's like learning about Bitcoin, getting non KYC, I agree with that. If it's about like making the network more secure and stuff, sort of like yes and no. Like I sort of, that's a whole different topic, like the Bitcoin network security. But I think it's more about, if you want to make the Bitcoin network secure, you need to do whatever makes you the most profit, which is, if it's
Mm-hmm.
mining, then it's mining. If it's doing something else to stack sats, then do that other thing to stack sats. But whatever ends up making you the most sats is going to be what's best for the Bitcoin network. Is sort of my general opinion. That doesn't necessarily mean mining.
Yeah, okay. That's a really good frame for people to think about. So coming back to then like an S9 versus an S19. Is S19 the newest rig, or is that what we're
Yeah,
riding?
that's like the
Or
newest Bitmain rig. Yeah. And,
yeah, okay.
and, and like, I'll give you just an example on that idea is like, I'm thinking of a friend of mine here in Calgary. He makes really nice art, and he actually mines a bit in his place. But I look at it, I'm like, well, if you make more money and stack more sats and become more self-sovereign by continuing to sell your art, that in my mind is the best for the Bitcoin network and for me as a different participant on the network. And
Mm-hmm.
sinking your dollars and your wealth and effectively your resources, like your survival, your means to survive, into a mine that isn't really paying out, you're not really helping yourself, and you're not helping Bitcoin. That's the way I look at it. So
Mm-hmm.
anything you can do to help yourself, self-interest, and max profits, I think is best for Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Um, noted. Noted. So last quick question. Hold on. Actually, that was the last question that I had on this part. Was what's your thoughts on things like compass mining and products like that? Do you think they're worth people pursuing, or do you think the fact that you don't really get the experience of like learning shit, like you're missing elements of
No,
the benefit of?
no, Compass offers a. I don't use Compass personally. I just have my own industrial business. But so if I needed to self mine, I throw it in my own rig. But um, no, I think Compass is doing a lot of good.
Mhm.
They're facilitating people to become miners. And actually, I don't know exactly how it works with Compass, but in some cases, these guys, and it probably could be the case with Compass, they'll even give you remote access to your unit. So I mean, it's like, are they taking away the learning? Not really. I mean, their customers can still be, I think, somewhat involved. And let's face it, I mean, we're all mining on mining pools. Like, we're not connected
Mhm.
to our own nodes, like mining solo. And anyone who truly wants to learn can actually just go do that. You can do that with download Bitcoin uh, CG Miner and Bitcoin Core, and you can, honestly, I don't even know how to figure that out myself. I'm not a software guy, but you can do it, right? You can do it.
Yeah.
I actually started mining with, before I bought my first S9 in my garage, I bought a little USB stick and stuck it in my computer and ran, I think, CG Miner, and that's how I was
Mhm.
mining. I was mining to like Slush Pool or something.
Mhm.
Um, that's how I learned, though, and you can do that with. You don't even need a little stick miner. You can just run your CPU and actually learn. But no, I really do like what Compass is doing, and I think they're doing a lot of good stuff. And actually, they're helping people that want to try to, like, people that are into hosting,
Yeah.
find customers. So yeah, I like to see what they're doing, and I think they're going to do really well, especially as home mining, because they're more retail focused, like getting the pleb to get their ASIC, and I think that's really big value add. And in the long term, they're going to create so many Bitcoiners. I love to see it. Like, I think it's great.
Cool. I'm taking a couple notes down here, man. All right, brother. Well, look. Is there anything else that you want to run through with respect to this topic, or anything else that you wanted to hit on? Because that was basically the key areas that I wanted to nail for people.
I usually just say no, but I don't know. I was just like, I think the only thing that I was just oops, my thing's almost dead. I was just like tweeting about it, actually, like the all this regulation stuff with that's getting passed in the U.S. I don't know exactly what's going on, but like the crypto regulation, like the broker, like naming basically anyone that facilitates Bitcoin transactions as a broker, and all these onerous rules.
Mm.
I just find it funny how uh, like people are so scared of this, like as if it's unexpected, and
Mm.
as if
Mm.
it's like a threat to Bitcoin. It's like, it's not a threat to Bitcoin. Like, all this regulation stuff, and I've had this argument with people like very recently. I won't name specifically who, but like they were arguing with me on a different forum about like, well, if they keep banning, if they put this in place and if they ban Bitcoin, you know, it's all going to go to shit and lose value and it'll be in a death spiral. And he owns a business that is heavily Bitcoin focused, right? And I'm thinking to myself, and I said to him, like, if you believe that what you're saying, that the
Yeah,
government has the power to destroy Bitcoin through a few arbitrary bans and pen signing like ceremonies, why are you invested everything into Bitcoin? Like, how do you do that? How do you invest everything in it into something that you believe is so fragile? The reason I've like invested well, all my time, especially since 2016, and effort and passion into Bitcoin is because I'm trying to find out what can destroy Bitcoin and how can
yep.
it happen. And I can so far I've not been able to figure it out. And I've gone down every rabbit hole I could with everyone, like in conversations like we're having now, and on Reddit and over the years on every forum, and I cannot find anyone explain to me, convince me, say, and I might be too stupid to understand their arguments, but no one's been able to convince me why Bitcoin's could fail or how it fails. So that's what I'm looking for. If I could learn that, if I could figure out, well, there's a scenario where it fails, well, I might change my investing habits. So I find this
Dude,
regulation stuff. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I 100% agree with you. I think, I mean, there's a couple of elements in it for me. Is like, number one, um, it, you know, regulation is not a threat to Bitcoin. You know, regulation is just the threat to the people that are being,
Following
uh,
the rules.
you know, following the rules, but also the people that get pushed out of the market thanks to regulation. So all it is like, by America regulating Bitcoin, it's not hurting anyone but the potential American consumer who might get less services. Bitcoin
Yeah,
doesn't give a fucking rat's ass about any of this
no,
shit. So that's like, you know, for me, it's like dumbass American politicians, you know, like China literally just scored an own goal. I did a tweet about this. China scored an own goal, you know, a couple months ago, like by, you know, banning for the 100th time. Um, and, and then I said, and not to be outdone in the moron Olympics, you know, US bureaucrats go and, you know, try and score an own goal of their own. You know,
yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
good.
matter to Bitcoin. It's like they literally just trying to fuck their own people over.
That's a pretty
That's
good
all it is.
analogy, actually. Yeah, they're fucking
That's
over their own fans, right? Like, um, yeah. So it's funny, like all these people like scared and like, you know, worried about this regulation and stuff. It's like, I just see that as enforcing Bitcoin's need to exist, and it's gonna allow people to circumvent these rules, and it's going to pump even harder because of it. That's like my hypothesis. I mean,
hundred percent.
if the central bank could create a money that was capped, okay, and that was fairly distributed and like not diluted and no, not easily taxed, well, Bitcoin wouldn't have much of a fucking purpose if they could actually give the same value to their money as well. They could easily come regulate and destroy me out of business. Like, that's not the question. It's just like, oh, there's Upstream Data. We don't like what he's doing. Here's the law. You're out of business. And then I go out of business. But like, that doesn't affect Bitcoin. Like, other people will find ways to circumvent it. If they, for example, if they put regulation down on oil and gas mining and say, well, it's 100% tax, you're not allowed to do it. Well, people will just do it under the radar, and Bitcoin will be still extremely valuable, because it's valuable because of its use case, which is sensor resistance. So
Yeah, because of its resilience, because of the fact that none of it made it. Dude, you're 100% right. I've been laughing at this whole thing, like, you know, all these fucking CoinDesk losers and everyone freaking the fuck out. It's like, man, I mean, I can understand, like, you know, there is some sense in actually, as an American or as a business owner in America, wanting to say, hey, you're going to fuck up my business by, you know, changing the regulation. But it's not like there's a nuanced argument there. It's like it doesn't do anything to Bitcoin, but it might make some products and services that wanted to sell to American consumers and do business in America more difficult. So the ultimate person getting, kicked in the balls is actually the American consumer who may have wanted to move on to a Bitcoin standard. But at the end of the day, like, that is literally a fucking self-own. It is an own goal
Yeah.
that doesn't make Bitcoin any weaker. That just like
Well, think
fucks it
about
up for the constituents.
when they do this, they actually just make it more profitable for the people that don't obey, right? So
That's it.
China,
That's it. Yeah.
China banned effectively just about 100% of mining in China, and now it's all idle and waiting to go elsewhere or whatnot, or anything that's surveilled is, and anything that's secret is still going. So the people that are still going in China in secret are still, they're actually just like us in North America who are, say, unaffected by China ban, are making more money.
Yeah.
So
Making a
the
killing. Yeah.
regulation just makes everyone who is outside of that rule more money. That's
Yep.
exactly what, that's why I don't like, I fully expect there to be crazy rules coming about Bitcoin, because it is such an attack on the state of the world and the state of fiat. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's just amusing that people seem to be so surprised by it. It's like this is like just the beginning, like
Yeah.
in my
The
view.
yeah. It really is, and this is what, So I think the nuance of this argument is when people say, "Oh, this is going to destroy Bitcoin," it's like, no, you're a dumb cunt. It's not going to do anything to Bitcoin. Like, it's only going to affect, some people's capacity to run a specific type of business about Bitcoin. But it's
Yeah,
like, we don't need to lobby to save Bitcoin. Like, so in many ways, this might turn out to, like you said, just, I mean, I hope that the silver lining here is that a lot of these shitcoiners and shitcoin casinos and everything really have a fucking hard time out of this one, because that'd be fucking hilarious.
yeah, I'd like to see some people like that get wrecked. Yeah, people that have bullshitted their way to the top. But
That's it. That's it. They can have their let's see how strong their decentralization is when some fucking, like you said, signing ceremonies wipe them out completely. Like, and then you'll realize why Bitcoin itself is really important, because no signing ceremony is ever going to fucking turn it off.
no, exactly. I mean, I fully subscribe to the idea that everything is good for Bitcoin. There's literally
Yeah.
nothing. There's nothing you can do. I can't think of anything that you can do that's truly bad for it as as a network and a protocol. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, you can do things that are bad for me and you, but not for the whole system.
That's it.
So
That's it. That's it. Well, dude, that's a good note to end it on. So, really briefly, then, how can people find you online?
yeah, I'm usually trolling on Twitter at SG Barbour, BARBOUR. That's
Sweet.
my company's upstreamdata.ca.
.ca. Okay, awesome, man. All right, brother. Well, look, thank you for coming on. It's sort of like the first time we've had an opportunity to chat. We're in a couple of groups together, one in particular, which I really enjoy. So, um, hopefully, at some point, somewhere along the line, we'll catch up. Maybe Bitcoin 2022. And yeah, dude, really appreciate the insight and the conversation.
Yeah, this was fun. Yeah, anytime, man. Just hit me up.
Legend. All right, brother.
Yeah. See ya.